The last day of death row inmate Lynda Lyon, her final words shocked everyone in the room. She was once a beauty queen, a mother, and a voice for liberty, but her path would end inside Alabama's death chamber of Lynda Lyon, the last woman executed in the state, whose final hours revealed both defiance and despair. Her case shocked America. A woman who claimed she was fighting tyranny, yet whose actions led to a deadly confrontation with police. As the clock ticked down toward her final moment, she refused to show remorse, choosing silence over surrender. In this episode, we'll step inside her final 24 hours, from her last meal and final words to the haunting calm before the execution. If you want to explore more real-life prison stories and final hour documentaries, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because each week we uncover the chilling truth behind the world's most unforgettable final moments. Lynda's story began far from the cell block she now called home. Born in Florida, she had lived what seemed like an ordinary life. A career woman, a mother, and even a beauty pageant contestant. She had once been admired for her grace and determination. But something changed in the 1980s. After a bitter divorce and losing custody of her child, she began drifting toward anti-government groups that preached self-sovereignty and rebellion against federal authority. By the mid-1990s, Lynda had completely rejected the U.S. legal system. She stopped paying taxes, claimed the government had no jurisdiction over her, and began spreading her beliefs through pamphlets and speeches. It was during this time she met George Sibley, a man who shared her anti-government views, and who would ultimately share her fate. Together, they became inseparable, partners in love, and soon, in crime. Their downward spiral reached its tragic climax on October 4, 1993, in Opelika, Alabama. After being pulled over for a missing license plate, the confrontation between the couple and Officer Roger Motley quickly escalated. Within minutes, gunfire erupted in a busy shopping center parking lot. Officer Motley was fatally wounded, and both Sibley and Lynda fled the scene. A massive manhunt followed. When they were finally captured days later in Georgia, they refused to identify themselves, insisting that the United States government had no authority to arrest them. At trial, their defiance didn't fade. Lynda rejected legal counsel, refused to acknowledge the court's legitimacy, and argued she had acted in self-defense. But the jury saw it differently. Both she and Sibley were convicted of capital offense, and by 1994, they were sentenced to die by electric chair, Alabama's method at the time. For nearly a decade, Lynda sat on death row at Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women, surrounded by cold concrete, iron bars, and the rhythmic clang of doors that echoed like a clock counting down to her execution. She spent her days reading legal documents, writing letters, and refusing to sign any appeal that would recognize the court's authority over her. Unlike most inmates awaiting execution, Lynda did not seek mercy. She had no last-minute petitions, no emotional pleas. When asked if she wanted a minister or a spiritual advisor, she declined. To her, her beliefs were her faith. To her supporters, she was a martyr. To the state, she was an unrepentant killer. The final day began early, under the dull glow of fluorescent lights that hummed through the corridor. It was October 10th, 2002, the day Alabama would carry out its first female execution in over 45 years. At 5 a.m., guards performed their routine count, lingering for a moment outside Lynda's cell. She was awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, a Bible beside her, calm and silent. For breakfast, she refused the standard meal. Instead, she requested coffee, strong black with no sugar. Throughout the morning, she read quietly and exchanged polite conversation with her guards. Some said she appeared at peace. Others saw something colder, a woman whose conviction had buried all fear. By noon, the warden informed her the time had been set, 6 p.m. Execution by electrocution, unless she chose the newly introduced lethal injection method. Without hesitation, she declined. "The electric chair is fine," she said. "I will face it as I lived, on my terms." That afternoon, she was allowed to make a final phone call. Instead of speaking to family, she chose to call her attorney, not to appeal, but to restate her stance. The state had no right to take her life. It was a declaration she'd made countless times before, but now it would be her last. As the sun began to dip beyond the Alabama horizon, the air in Holman grew still. At 5:45 p.m., officers escorted Lynda from her holding cell. Her hair, streaked with gray, was tied neatly behind her. She wore a simple white prison uniform and no jewelry. Witnesses described her demeanor as composed. Eerily so. No tears, no trembling hands. She walked with steady steps toward the chamber, known among staff as Yellow Mama, the electric chair that had been in service since 1927. Over the decades, dozens of men had taken that same walk, but never a woman like her. Inside the chamber, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and oil. The wooden chair sat under harsh lights, thick leather straps ready to bind her arms and legs. As she took her seat, she looked straight ahead, not at the witnesses, not at the warden, but at something only she could see. When asked for her final statement, she spoke clearly. "I am here today because I have stood for truth and for liberty. I do not recognize the authority of this court or this government. May God judge me, not man." There was no emotion in her voice, no pleading, no apology. At 6:12 p.m., the signal was given. The current surged through the chair, flashing once, twice. The room filled with a low hum and the faint smell of ozone. Witnesses later described her body stiffening for a brief moment before falling still. At 6:18 p.m., the prison doctor pronounced her dead. The reign of Yellow Mama had claimed another life, and with it, the last female prisoner to die by Alabama's hand. Outside the prison, the reaction was divided. Some saw justice served, a murderer finally facing her punishment. Others saw tragedy, a woman consumed by ideology, executed by the very system she'd spent years rejecting. For Officer Roger Motley's family, closure came not from celebration, but from exhaustion. His widow said simply, "We can finally rest. It's over." George Sibley, her partner in both crime and conviction, met the same fate just months later. Like Lynda, he refused to appeal, refused to repent. In the years since, Lynda Lyon Block has become a symbol in certain circles. To some, a cautionary tale about extremism. To others, a misguided hero who stood firm in her beliefs until the end. Inside Alabama's archives, her file remains marked, completed, 10-10-2. But to those who study the psychology of death row inmates, her story stands out. She was neither broken nor afraid. She was unwavering, even as the switch was thrown. Perhaps that's what makes her final hours so haunting. Not the method of death, but the quiet certainty with which she met it. A woman who once believed she could fight the law, finally silenced by it. And as the lights dimmed over Holman that evening, there was only one question left hanging in the air. Was she a defender of freedom or a prisoner of her own delusion?